As we lean into the 21st century and start looking at renewables and renewable energy, environmental stewardship, these are all the right thing to do for our nation. And protecting our natural resources is a foundational piece that it's got to be remain part of our core values.
The Natural Resource Conservation Team at Fort Custer continues to dispel out-of-date notions that environmental stewardship blocks training by proving the opposite. They demonstrate national leadership in opening more training land on their 7,500-acre site through aggressive natural resource conservation practices, while simultaneously saving money for military training and dramatically enhancing the habitat and wildlife at Fort Custer. Their exceptional conservation efforts have earned the Michigan Army National Guard the 2011 Natural Resource Conservation Team National Guard Bureau Environmental Security Award. A key ingredient to Michigan's success is that their cultural resource management team embraces the larger vision of sustaining the mission and operation of its soldiers. Fort Custer partners with private contractors and conservation organizations, colleges and universities, and regulatory authorities to go beyond mere compliance and regulatory response. This powerful and unlikely coalition of strong advocates for the National Guard mission realizes incredible cost savings for military operations and opens more areas for training.
It's an advantage working with the National Guard, especially with Fort Custer here, is the high quality management plan that they have in place. It allows us to assist them in their management needs. When some organizations don't quite have that plan in place, it makes those goals less attainable. So having that high quality management plan and actually putting efforts into making that happen is great.
Key examples include garnering over $500,000 in grants from state and federal agencies, as well as non-governmental organizations, to study endangered species and propagate native grasses. Construction and maintenance projects restore and maintain important habitats, including wetlands, uplands, and their rare prairie fens. Of particular note, prairie fens are some of the most threatened habitat communities in the world. At Fort Custer, this protection is part of the National Guard's National Defense Mission.
In partnership with the National Guard, with a lot of other agencies and nonprofits in the state, we were able to write a $1 million North American Wetlands Conservation Act grant. It's a federal appropriation, and use those funds along with some Ducks Unlimited funds and some National Guard funds to complete this project and replace a failing control structure before we ended up possibly losing this wetland forever. They've been great to work with. They've brought a lot of resources to the table that some of your other private organizations or even public organizations don't have. I hope we have many more years after this project to continue to work out here.
Michigan also achieves significant cost savings by enabling their training center to be a living laboratory. Graduate students are hired as interns to perform survey and maintenance work, giving them invaluable field experience.
I've got a really great environmental team, but they can't do it all. We're obviously a training center. We need to maintain environment for training soldiers that come here, but we have to do it in a way that sustains it over years. And again, we can't do it alone.
The Fort Custer Conservation Team has really lit a match to the concept of prescribed burns for land management. In fact, the team has established itself as a regional expert on the subject. They are able to lead burns on their own and offer prescribed fire and crew boss academies for other agencies in the state and throughout the region. They have sponsored training with the Michigan Prescribed Fire Council, partnered with the Michigan Climate Coalition, and with Ohio State University, developed education curriculums administered throughout the United States.
The size of both here and Camp Grayling where we work, it's amazing to get into some of these habitats and actually do some large-scale work where we'll burn anywhere from 10 to 40 acres on our property at the Nature Center. We might come out here and burn 300 acres. So the level of experience is much greater being able to work with the National Guard.
Over the past 2 years, Fort Custer has managed more than 6,000 acres with prescribed burn fires. One 250-acre tract was cleared at the request of trainers for a convoy reaction course. Simultaneous to enhancing training, the team transformed the area into a high-quality prairie of pre-settlement native species, proving that conservation, restoration, and soldier training can thrive together.
It surprised me a lot when I first started working for the military, the degree to which they put natural resources at the top of their priority list. The Army does fantastic things on all their installations across the country.
Mowing, targeted stem cuttings, and prescribed burns minimize pesticide application to control invasive species in Fort Custer's continuing prairie restoration and native species propagation efforts.
In the 80 or 100 years that this has been a military installation, about 75% of it has grown back to forest, like you see behind you here. So prairie and open space is at a premium here at Fort Custer. So that's part of the reason that we emphasize prairie restoration is for training for the troops, because we need those open spaces for those maneuver type of activities that they use.
Much of this restoration is done in partnership with the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Great Lakes Ecological Management Team, each of whom have covered the costs or provided material and labor to complete these tasks. They also work with local schools to have students raise beetles as part of their curriculum. Released on post, the beetles help control the pesky purple loosestrife. Michigan State University is working with Fort Custer to develop a biological control for garlic mustard.
The native plants are just a little better at surviving the kind of things that they're subject to here at Fort Custer, including the training, the winters, the summers, etc. So they do a little better job for what we want.
All this emphasis on habitat is leading to positive results in wildlife management as well. The Cerealine warbler is thriving at Fort Custer, while its range and habitat outside the National Guard Training Center continues to diminish each year. Tagged and monitoring eastern box turtles helps to guide training activities for soldiers and adjust their land management practices.
Land is a resource that is not renewable unless you choose to make it so. The training and the land use really has to be combined with what are we going to leave for the future, what are we going to need in the future, and we can't destroy it in the name of now.
All told, Fort Custer's vast network of partnerships is paying off for training and the environment. The Natural Resource Conservation Team's emphasis of further creating nature and recreational visitation opportunities for the public make the National Guard a highly respected and indispensable member of the community.
We'll never be able to sustain the war fight and preserve our resources if we don't take care of the environment first. So when you look at the number of things that they were able to accomplish, the relationships they were able to leverage, state, local, federal, universities, it's a force multiplier, and it's amazing.